Welcome to module number 4, the discussion on accounting for disbursements and receipts of the government as a continuation of the modules in accounting for government and non-profit organizations. So at the end of the module, we will be able to enumerate the basic principles of expenditures and disbursements, the fundamental principles for expenditures and disbursements in actual work situations, the concepts of irregular, unnecessary, excessive, extravagant, or unconscionable expenditures, and some applicable general provisions of the General Appropriations Act. So let us proceed with the fundamental principles for expenditures and disbursements in government accounting. Under PD 1445, they enumerated the fundamental principles governing the financial transactions of a government agency. So isa-isahin lang natin ito ng mabilisan because when you read the items, tong mga principles na ito related to government accounting, which will you apply when you are maybe working in the government or you are analyzing transactions for the government, these are the basic principles, fundamental principles. 1. No money shall be paid out of any public treasury or depository except in pursuance of an appropriation law or other specific statutory authority. So ito yung sinasabi natin before, kung ano yung mga items na nandoon sa General Appropriations Act or doon sa special appropriation laws na naipasa, ay yun lang dapat yung pagkukuhanan ng mga items. So kung halimbawa, naka-indicate doon na bibili ka ng 10 ambulansya, dapat 10 ambulansya lang ang bibilin. Hindi pwedeng sumobra doon. At kung ano yung amount na naka-indicate doon ay yun lang ang actual na i-disburse or babayaran ng ating treasury. The government funds or property shall be spent or used solely for public purposes. Ang sinasabi dito for public purposes ay lahat ng transaction should be for the benefit of the public interest, kumbaga in the interest of the public. Kaya nga in the government meron yung tinatawag na certification for public purpose. So ibig sabihin halimbawa nag-conduct ka ng trainings o kaya nag-conduct ka ng mga seminars or workshops o kaya ay meron kang mga travel na inattendan, merong isang certification which indicates that the travel or the training or the seminars na conduct is for this purpose. So ini-indicate kung ano ang magiging benefit noon sa mga government stakeholders because the expenses in the government shall always be solely for public purposes. So halimbawa binigyan ka ng inallow ka to attend a particular training, this is not for the benefit of the person or the employee. But the benefit of the employee, kumbaga, kung ano yung makukuha niya doon will be applied or will be cascaded to the public. Kumbaga, for example, nag-attend ka ng training and then yung training na yon eventually will be used in the operations of a particular unit in the government na kailangan mo to be able to effect yung to efficiently function yung position mo in the benefit of the public pa din. So laging ganun. Kung may bibilin kang mga items, kung may i-construct for example ng mga bridges or it is always for public purposes. Hindi pwedeng mayroong private persons na majority ay mabebenefitan nung particular expenditure. So yun lang concept ng solely for public purposes. Next, trust funds shall be available and may be spent only for the specific purpose for which the trust was created or the funds received. Ito yung dinidiscuss ko before on your quiz, yung fiduciary funds. Number 4, fiscal responsibility shall to the greatest extent be shared by all those exercising authority over the financial affairs of the government agency. So, the head of the agency, including the subordinates under him, are responsible in the possession and in the custody of the government properties and funds. Kumbaga, it is a shared responsibility by all. Disbursement or disposition of the government funds or property shall invariably bear the approval of the proper official. So, dun sa disbursement voucher na later on, I will be requiring you to fill up a disbursement voucher at yung iba pang forms under the government. Merong mga signatories doon. For halimbawa, for Box A, Box B, and Box C, sino dapat ang pipirma doon? Yan ang sinasabi dyan. It shall invariably bear the approval of the proper officials. So, kung sino yung officials na given or delegated the authority to approve or to approve or to disapprove particular claim or a particular reimbursement for expenditure or payment of out of the government funds, yun yung sinasabi dyan. The disbursement must be approved by the proper officials. Claims against the government fund shall be supported with complete documentation. The concept of the complete documentation, the Commission on Audit has prescribed the documentary requirements for particular nature of transactions. For example, nagre-reimburse ka ng traveling expenses, nag-indicate na si Commission on Audit under merong separate documentary list ang Commission on Audit for traveling expenses. So, naka-indicate doon ano ang mga kailangan mong i-present when you are reimbursing traveling expenses. For example, yung mga itinerary of travel, your travel order, your bus ticket, or the certificate of appearance, certificate of attendance. So, there are several requirements related to particular transactions. So, sample ko lang yon. For example naman, ikaw ay bumili ka ng photocopying machine, ano ang kailangan mong documentary requirement. Halimbawa, nag-attend ka ng seminars, ano ang documentary requirements. So, kung kulang ang documentary requirements, hindi mo pa-process yung disbursement. So, yun yung logic nitong complete documentation. All laws and regulations are applicable to financial transactions shall be faithfully adhered to. Yes. Next, the generally accepted principles and practices of accounting as well as of sound management and fiscal administration shall be observed, provided that they do not contravene existing laws and regulations. So, anong sinasabi dito? When itong generally accepted principles, ito yung GAAP under the accountancy profession. Kapag daw itong GAAP is dapat i-observe. However, when it contravenes the law or the regulations, ano ang magpe-prevail? Ano ang magpe-prevail? The law and the regulation will prevail when there are conflicts between the law and the GAAP. So this is special in government accounting because remember the GAAP are the basic principles in the creation of the standards na ino-observe natin. Pero specifically, sinasabi sa general provisions of the general provisions, itong fundamental principles ay, the fundamental principles, ang sinasabi dito ay, kung mayroong conflict between the GAAP and the law and the regulations will prevail. Okay, let's proceed with the restrictions on the use of the government funds. Remember, under the GAA, kung ano yung mga items na naka-indicate sa yung General Appropriations Act, doon mo lang dapat gagastusin ang binigay sa yung pondo ng DBM through the issuance of a notice of cash allocation. So, ang sinasabi dito, money cannot be paid from the treasury or depository except when authorized by law or passed by Congress. So, ito na nga yung dinidiscuss. Funds appropriated by the Congress solely for public purposes, yes. The general provisions of the GAA define restrictions on the use of the government funds where no government fund shall be utilized for the following purposes. So, on the face of the General Appropriations Act, sinasabi na yung mga restrictions, yung mga hindi pwedeng paggamitan ng GAA. So, whether or not it is included in your budget, as long as it falls on the general provisions na naka-indicate dito, hindi yan pwedeng gastusan ng gobyerno. Ano yan? One is the purchase of the motor vehicle. So, generally, hindi ka pwedeng bumili ng mga sasakyan, mga motor vehicle. Ng mga vehicle na mayroong motor engine. Generally, hindi ka pwedeng bumili. So, naglagay naman siya dito ng napakaraming exceptions. So, So, ano-ano naman itong mga exceptions? Pasadahan lang natin. Medical ambulances, mga ambulansya, mga patrol, motorcycle, utility vehicle, road construction equipment, motorized bangka, used for mass transport, necessary in the interest of the public, uh, those authorized by the department agency head o yung mga department secretary ng DBM, or those authorized by the president, the senate president, the speaker of the house, or the chief justice of the Supreme Court. So kung mapapansin mo, ang naka-indicate dito itong medical ambulance, military, lahat yung mga motor vehicle na exceptions diyan ay used for public purposes lamang. So kung itong mga biniling motor vehicle are not included in the exceptions, hindi yan pwedeng bilhin using the government funds because you will be charged of yung technical malversation na diniscuss natin before. So, isa-isahin natin itong mga items na hindi pwedeng paggamitan ng government funds. Next, to defray foreign travel expenses of any government official or employee. So, hindi pwedeng gumastos ang gobyerno para sa foreign travel ng mga government official or employee generally. Pero naglista rin siya dyan ng various exceptions. Ano tong mga to? Training, seminar, conference abroad when the officials and other personnel of the foreign mission cannot effectively represent the country therein. So, kung if the incurrence of a foreign travel expense is necessary to be able to represent our country in foreign mission, yan ay pwede. Necessitated by international commitments. For example, yung mga ASEAN Summit, for example, mga OPEC Summit, ASEAN Summit, mga UN Summit, may international commitments ang Pilipinas or other functions related to representing the country for these international commitments, these are allowed. Allowed na mag-defray ka ng mga foreign travel expenses, magbayad ka ng foreign travel expenses out of the government funds. So merong merong limitations provided that no official or employee including the uniformed personnel of the DILG, yung mga police, and the Department of National Defense, yung mga army naman, will be sent to foreign training, conference, or attend international when they are due to retire within 1 year after the said foreign travel. So kung ikaw ay police and army, Philippine Army, Navy, ganyan, Air Force, you are not allowed to attend foreign or to incur foreign expenses in foreign training conference when you are retiring within 1 year after the foreign travel. So, halimbawa, mag-attend ka ng training ngayon, tapos within 1 year pala after today, within 1 year after today ay magre-retire ka na. Hindi pwede. Hindi pwedeng gumamit ng foreign travel expenses dyan. Simply because the training will not, yung knowledge na makukuha mo on the foreign training conference ay hindi na yan magagamit for public purpose. Bakit? Kasi nga magre-retire ka na, so magiging personal ang nature ng expenses. Hindi mo na yan mai-implement on your position, on your post. Hindi mo na yan magagamit on your post dahil pa-retire ka na. Next, to provide fuel parts, repair, and maintenance to any government vehicle which is not permanently marked for official use only. So, hindi pwedeng lagyan ng i-repair ang mga itong mga ganitong klaseng vehicle kung wala namang tag na or markings na official use only. Hindi pwedeng nilagyan ng gasolina or i-repair ang mga ganitong items. So, yun lang naka-indicate dyan. So, pakibasa itong mga special provisions dyan related to the motor vehicles. To pay honoraria, allowances, or other forms of compensation to any government official or employee except those especially authorized by law. So, hindi pwede itong mga honoraria, allowance, or other forms to any government official. Simply because you are a salaried employee of the government. Tapos kapag nagpa-seminar ang government, babayaran ka pa ng government ng honorarium or allowance or other forms of benefits or compensation related to that. Hindi po pwede because it is part of your function as a government employee. Pero merong exceptions dyan na ino-authorize ng law na mga specific exceptions lang on cases, on very limited cases. To be invested in non-government securities, money market placement, and similar investments in a private banking institution. So, yung pera ng gobyerno inilagay sa mga negotiable instruments ng isang private bank. Halimbawa, itong CLSU, naglagay siya ng time deposit sa BDO. So it is not allowed under the rules of the general provisions of the GAA because normally, ang funds na yan gagamitin for public purpose and not for yung mga ganong klaseng investments. Next, the use of trust funds. The trust fund shall not be paid out of any public treasury or deposit. The trust fund shall not be paid out of any public treasury or depository except in fulfillment of the purpose of which the trust was created. So ito na yung dinidiscuss ko before na on the previous modules, yung fiduciary fund. So ini-indicate lang dyan, for example, you are the government agency, pwede kasing meron kang general fund, pero meron ka ring trust fund. Anong ibig sabihin na itong trust fund na to? Binigyan ka ng pera for example, sa DSWD, binigyan ka diretso from the national government, nag-appropriate ng fund specifically for the feeding program of a particular for example, nagbigay ang national government diretso doon sa mismong government agency, so hindi siya idinaan doon sa normal process on the general appropriation. So binigyan ka ng pondo to be able to create a livelihood for a particular province. So ikaw ay government agency na ganon. So for example, DSWD ka, binigyan ka ng funds from the national government to be able to magbigay ng livelihood and for a particular province. So, yung trust fund, yun ay trust fund dahil you are in fiduciary capacity. Kumbaga, you are stewards of the fund. So, kung ano man ang kikitain doon sa mismong fund, ay pwedeng gamitin in the operations. Ang sinasabi lang dito ay hindi mo pwedeng gamitin yung funds na ibinigay na yun and the livelihood, and then eventually because of the extensions on your activities ay idadala mo na sa pambili ng motor vehicle. So hindi pwede yung ganon. Unless it is authorized by the from which the fund originates. So, the trust fund shall not be paid out of any public treasury except in fulfillment of the purpose of which the trust was created or the funds received. Next, the fiscal responsibility by the head of the agency. The fiscal responsibility rests directly with the chief of the government subdivision. So, yung head of the agency is responsible in the management of the financial affairs of the government agency na pinamumunuan niya and all other subordinates under him. So ang sinasabi lang dito, nililinaw ng Commission on Audit that the responsibility in the public finances of the government or in safeguarding the resources of the government pertains to the agency, the agency management. While the Commission on Audit is only responsible in determining whether that responsibility has been properly and effectively discharged. So, ang responsibility, kumbaga parang sa ano yan sa when you are doing your annual audit report, the responsibility on the audit report rests on the management, and the auditor is only responsible in determining whether or not the financial statement has been faithfully represented. So yun sinasabi dito. The agency management is primarily responsible in safeguarding the resources. Yung lahat ng financial affairs ng government is the responsibility of the agency management. Ang role lang ni COA is to identify whether yung responsibility na yun ay properly bang na-implement o na-discharge. Okay, next, let's move to the basic requirements under the all classes of disbursement. So ito, in-enumerate under the general provisions, which is itong enumerations ng basic requirements stems from the rules of the Commission on Audit. So, ang sinasabi dito sa basic requirements, dapat lahat ng transactions meron nitong mga requirements na ito. Kaya nga ang sabi dyan, all are applicable to all classes of disbursements, whether maliit or malaki. So, isa-isahin lang natin. Madali lang naman siyang maintindihan. Number 1, Certificate of Availability of Funds. Existence of lawful appropriation, expended balance of which free from other obligations which is sufficient to cover the expenditure. So, ang sinasabi lang dito sa Certificate of Availability of Funds, kung matatandaan mo, yung obligation. So, titingnan ng budget officer whether or not the funds are available based on the General Appropriations Act na naipasa. So, yun ang sinasabi dyan. Approval of the claim or expenditure. Itong number 1, itong Certificate of Availability of Funds, this is certified by the accountant of the government agency. So, yung accountant in coordination with the budget officer. Next, approval of claim of expenditure by head of office or his duly authorized representative. So, ito yung ini-indicate natin kanina doon sa fundamental principles that yung approving authorities ang nag-a-approve on particular items. Halimbawa, the disbursement vouchers and payrolls shall be approved by the head of the agency or his duly authorized representative as to validity, propriety, and legality of the claim. Okay, this is self-comprehensible. Number 3, documents establish the validity of the claim. Ito na yung in-explain ko kanina, yung documentary requirements. Ayan, sabi niyo dyan, to establish the validity and correctness of the claim for payment. The evidence is used by the state auditor to evaluate the authenticity and authority of the claim. So, si COA, ang tinitingnan niya, they are always document-based. Kung alin ang naka-attach sa document, they will be using it in assessing whether or not the transaction is valid or the transaction is authentic and with legal and with authority. There is a clear provision under COA Circular 92-389. Ang sabi dito, it should be clear, however, that the submission of the supporting documents enumerated under each type of transaction. Ito yung sinasabi ko kanina, halimbawa, traveling, meron nang naka-indicate si COA dyan kung alin ang requirement. Halimbawa, training expenses, merong naka-indicate na documentary requirement na kailangang i-fill up. Ano ang sinasabi lang dito? Ang sinasabi lang dito, nililinaw ng Commission on Audit under Circular 92-389 and 97-004 na the submission of the documents does not of itself makes the transaction valid. Kumbaga, ang sinasabi dito, it does not preclude reasonable questions on the funding, legality, regularity, necessity, or economy of the expenditure of transaction. So, kahit na kumpleto yung documentary requirements mo, it does not preclude COA from asking for the funding, legality. So, pwede pa rin questionin yan. So, kumbaga, ang sinasabi lang dito, the supporting document on itself, dapat ay matibay yung mga supporting documents na naka-attach doon sa mga disbursement vouchers or mga claims for reimbursement of expenses mo. Such questions may be raised by any of the signatories of the voucher also. Sinasabi dyan, kung yung approving, yung accountant, the approving authority, or the bosses of the units, pwede nilang i-question yung mga supporting documents na pine-present mo. So, nilinaw lang yung documents na yan. So, it is not conclusive na pag nag-submit ka ng document, ay free ka na sa liability because pwedeng i-scrutinize yung mga documents, pwedeng i-audit or i-counter-check yung validity or authenticity ng mga items or mga supporting documents na yan. Next, number 4, the legality of transactions and conformity of the expenditure to existing laws and regulations. Okay, the legality, it must be always within the rules and regulations. So, yun lang sinasabi dyan. Okay, number 5, the proper accounting treatment, proper classification of accounts, and use of the coding structure in the revised chart of accounts shall be followed to achieve uniformity in the recording of transactions. So, sinasabi dito, you must always use the revised chart of accounts. Hindi pwedeng magkakaiba kayo. Halimbawa, for this particular agency, halimbawa, ang ginagamit in using, in recognizing water expenses ay utility expenses. For example, utility expenses. Tapos sa kabilang agency naman, water expenses. Tapos sa ibang agency naman, basta electricity and water, utility expense na ginagamit. So, the introduction of the revised chart of accounts aims to achieve uniformity in the recording of transactions. Kailangan, kung ano ang nature ng expense, hanapin mo sa revised chart of accounts kung alin items ba siya magfo-fall. So, kailangan, ganun ang rules. Kung ganitong item, hanapin mo kung saan siya magfo-fall. Kung lahat sila nagfo-fall doon, yun ang gagamitin mo. Because, kung wala yung account title na yun sa revised chart of accounts, hindi mo siya pwedeng gamitin. So, yun lang ang sinasabi dyan sa proper accounting treatment. So, I think I will be ending the discussion for this, for module 4 muna dito. Hihinto ko because medyo mahaba itong mga susunod na discussions. Kung meron kang questions, you can drop it on the comment section in the Google Classroom or in the GC, sa mismong group chat natin. On the next part, I will be discussing yung IIU, EEU expenditures under government accounting. So, more or less, ay medyo na-overwhelm ka with the terminologies because this is new to you. Itong accounting for government is new to you. Because this is ibang industry kasi itong government accounting, ibang rules ang sineset nito as compared to what you have learned in your financial accounting na nag-a-account ng mga private company reports ng company financial affairs. So kung meron ka pang question, maybe you can drop in the comment section. Pwede rin sa yung class president. I will assess kung pwede ko siyang gawa ng discussion video kung medyo nakakalito. I think for the rest of the SEM, we will be adhering to the asynchronous mode of discussion as indicated in the memo of the management. So siguro ganito ang magiging setup natin. Please, I want to emphasize for you to observe yung submission within the deadline and to always check whether yung nasa-submit is tama yung i-attach ng mga documents dahil once I release the answers at hindi ka nakapag-submit, I will not be considering kasi it will be disadvantageous to others dahil na-release na yung answers. So I think that ends the discussion on the first part of Module 4. Thank you.